Some students study for 8 hours and forget almost everything the next day, while others study for just 3 hours and somehow remember almost most of it. So, what's the difference? It's not intelligence, it's not talent, it's definitely not luck. The difference is how they study. In this video, I will show you science backed study techniques, practical strategies, and few AI tools that can help you learn more efficiently. So, you spend less time staring at your books and more time actually remembering what you study. So, if your exams are coming up and studying feels harder than ever, this video is for you. Now, let's be honest. Studying isn't always difficult because the subjects are hard. Sometimes it is difficult because your brain simply refuses to cooperate. You open your book and suddenly ceiling becomes fascinating. Your water bottle somehow needs refilling and cleaning your entire room feels more important. We have all been there. And no, you're not the only one. In fact, most of the students fall into one of two categories. First type doesn't really know how to study effectively, and the second type has watched 47 productivity videos, brought aesthetic stationery, and somehow spent 20 minutes organizing their desk instead of studying. Different problems, same result, stress. So today, let's talk about both of the students, why they struggle, and how they can actually study smarter instead of just looking productive. Let's start with type 1 students. These students usually have the syllabus, but they don't have proper notes. Not because they are lazy, not because they aren't smart, but because nobody actually taught them how to study. For many students, making notes means beautiful handwriting, colorful highlighters, aesthetic headings, and 3 hours spent decorating a single page. At this point, the notes look better than their future. The problem is that they spend so much time trying to make their notes look perfect that they barely spend time understanding the chapter itself. Eventually, everything starts feeling overwhelming. They don't know where to begin, so they procrastinate. Not because they don't care, but because they don't know where to start. And honestly, modern studying has become much harder than it used to be. Not because students have become less intelligent, but because our brain have adapted to something that completely different. Constant stimulation. Every swipe on social media gives us something new. A different video, a different song, a different joke, a different trend. Our brain get used to receiving quick rewards every few seconds. So when we try sitting down to study, the book suddenly feels painfully slow. You open Instagram for 5 minutes and somehow it's an hour later you have watched 3 productivity reels, someone's skincare routine, and now you somehow know the entire life story of a stranger from another country. After all that, your brain feels exhausted even though you didn't actually do anything productive. And here's the important part. That doesn't mean your attention span is permanently damaged. It simply means your brain has adapted a constant stimulation. And good news, your brain can adapt again. With a right study habits, focusing becomes easier over the time. Now, even type 1 students can be divided into two smaller groups. The first group still has enough time before their exam, and the second group has waited so long that even motivational reels has stopped working. But first, let's talk about the student who still have time. If your exams are still a few weeks or months ago, this is actually the best time to build good study habits. And yes, making notes is helpful, but your first goal isn't note taking. Your first goal is understanding. A lot of students open a lecture and immediately start copying every single sentence like a human printer. Don't do that. Instead, watch the lecture and read the chapter. But what if making notes still feels overwhelming? That's where AI can actually be useful. Not to do all work for you, but to make learning easier. You can ask AI to explain confusing concepts in simple language, turn long chapter into short revision notes, or even create practice quizzes based on topics you are studying. Use the right way. AI doesn't replace learning. It simply helps you learn more efficiently, and that's exactly what studying smarter is all about. Now, let's talk about the second category. The students who open their syllabus, look at the calendar, look back at syllabus, and silently accept their fate. If your exams are only few days away, you need to stop studying like someone who has 3 months left, because you don't. Right now, your goal isn't to finish entire syllabus perfectly. Your goal is to score as many marks as possible with the time you have. And that requires strategy, not perfection. The first thing you should do is identify your high weightage chapter, frequently repeated topics, and important concepts. Because not every chapter carries the same importance. Studying smarter always beats studying blindly. Once you have identified your priorities, forget the 4-hour lecture. forget rewriting your textbook, and definitely forget making a static notes. At this stage, they are just stealing your time. Instead, watch shorter lecture that explains the concept quickly, understand the topic, then make short revision notes. Just keywords, important formulas, definitions, tiny flowcharts, one-line explanations, anything that help you remember the topic instantly. These are the notes that will save you the night before your exam. But here's something interesting. Understanding the chapter is only half the job. Because most of the students don't actually struggle with studying. They struggle with remembering what they studied. And this is where science can help us. Imagine this, you finished reading an entire chapter, close the book, and 5 minutes later, you can't remember anything. Sounds familiar? That's because reading isn't the same as remembering. One of the most effective learning technique is called active recall. Instead of rereading the same page again and again, you force your brain to retrieve the information. And every time your brain successfully retrieves something, the memory becomes stronger. Psychologists call this testing effect. That's why solving questions usually help you remember more than simply rereading your notes. Here's how to use it. Study the topic properly once, close your book. Now try to explaining the topic in your own words. You can say it out loud, write a few points on paper, or even type it into your notes app if you don't feel like writing. The goal isn't to sound perfect. The goal is to notice what you can't remember. Because every time your brain struggles to recall something, it tells you exactly what needs more revision. Now let's make active recall even more effective. Turn it into a quiz. And honestly, this is one of my favorite ways to use AI. Instead of asking AI, summarize this chapter, try asking, ask me 10 questions from this chapter one at a time without giving me the answers. Now you are no longer passively reading, you are actively thinking. Answer each question in your own words and don't worry if you get something wrong. That's actually the whole point. First question you struggle with are topics you should revise again. In other words, your mistake becomes your study guide, and that's far more useful than reading the same chapter 5 times. So here's one mistake I see students make all the time. They ask AI, teach me everything, or summarize this entire chapter. That's too vague. AI become much more useful when you give it a specific role. For example, explain this topic like I am a beginner. Turn this chapter into revision notes. Ask me exam-style questions. Give me 5 tricky MCQs from this topic. The more specific your prompts, the better your results, and make things easier. I have included AI study prompts in the description that you can copy and use during your own study sessions. Now let's talk about the biggest reason students forget what they study. It's actually normal. Your brain naturally forgets something over time, which is exactly why revision matters. Instead of reading everything the night before your exam, review the information at increasing intervals. For example, study the chapter today, revise it again after 3 days, and then after 1 week, then after 2 weeks. Every time you revisit that information, you are reminding your brain, hey, this is important and don't throw it away. And over time, it becomes much more easier to remember. But here's one important tip. Don't use spaced repetition for every tiny detail. Otherwise, your entire life will become one giant revision timetable. Use it mainly for full chapters, important formulas, difficult concepts, or topics you keep forgetting. Those are the things worth revisiting. By now, you have probably realized something. There isn't one perfect study technique that works for everyone. The best study system is the one that fits your situation. If you still have plenty of your time before your exams, focus on understanding the concepts, making useful notes, and testing yourself regularly. But if your exams are just around the corner, forget perfection. Prioritize the most important topic, revise strategically, and spend less time making notes, and more time remembering what you already learned. But here's the truth. Studying for 10 hours doesn't automatically make you productive. If you spend those 10 hours passively reading same chapter over and over, you will probably forget the most of it. But if you study for 3 focused hours using the techniques like active recall, self-quizzing, and spaced repetition, you will often remember far more. At the end of the day, it's not about how long you study, it's about how well you study. Before we end, if staying organized is something you struggle with, I actually created something that might help. The Luminoir Student Planner Bundle. It includes a daily planner, a weekly planner, a notes page, an assignment tracker, an exam tracker, a habit tracker, and few more pages designed to help you stay organized without overcomplicating your routine. If that sounds useful, you can check out using the link in the description. One last thing before you leave, please stop comparing your study routine to those perfect productivity videos online. Most of them show highlights, not the struggle. You don't need 12 different highlighters. You don't need perfect study setup, and you definitely don't need to study for 14 hours every single day to become a good student. What you need is consistency. Even if today you only understand one topic, that's still progress. Even if you only study for one focused hour, that's still progress. Small improvements may not feel life-changing today, but over weeks and months, they add up in a ways you don't notice until you look back. So instead of asking yourself, how can I study longer? Start asking, how can I study smarter? Because the students who succeed aren't always the one who study the most. They are usually the one who understand how their brain learns best. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like it, subscribe to Luminoir, and let me know in the comments which study technique are you going to try first. I do genuinely love to know. Until then, take care of yourself, keep learning, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next video.